Hey, welcome back to the Golden Spoon Podcast. I'm McCall.
And I'm Jeremy.
And today we have a very special guest, Kane Sarota Novak, and he is from Australia. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Jeremy, you doing well today?
I'm doing well. He's actually a movie star, from what I believe. It's
Fantastic.
Very, very interesting.
He is a transformational coach and a founder of Story Extraction Methods. And Kane, are you there?
I am certainly here. Kane Sarota Novak. There we are.
And if I'm correct, I believe when you called in, it was from Australia. Is that where you reside currently?
Yes, it is. So I'm in far north Queensland, which is towards the top end of Australia. So we're in tropical weather here. So we don't have seasons. We have wet or dry.
Wow, that's crazy. We are actually in the middle. We were supposed to be starting spring, and it kind of started off like spring, but now it's wanting to try to fall back into winter. It's supposed to get down below freezing, I think, tonight and the next few nights. Or actually, I think for the next week and a half or so, it's supposed to be below freezing for the lows. So eventually, Alabama is where we're at. I think one day that we're going to see spring, hopefully.
Yes, when I was living in London, that's the type of weather we had there. But here, if we hit 10 degrees Celsius, people are freaking out and getting their woolies and going, "Oh my God, it's freezing!"
I bet.
Yeah, we deal here with humidity, and it's weird because you're like, it's hot, but I can't sweat because of the
humidity's pulling it out of you all the time.
Yeah, where I am, I've just gotten used to the fact that if I put some new clothes on, they'll be wet.
Oh wow!
So you wanted
you were saying I believe we spoke a little earlier about some of your background in the film industry. It was.
Yeah, if you want to talk on that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Look, I spent over 30 years in the film industry, like 3 decades.
Wow.
So film, television, theater, street performance, all of that kind of jazz. And the only reason why I got into it was, when I was a pretty big kid growing up, right up until the age of about 14. And I got bullied and beaten up and harassed, and I was a real introvert as a kid, and just wanted to be by myself and didn't want anyone to interact with, just because I was in fear of getting bullied, right?
Yeah. And
a lot of that bullying came from my sister. She was like 4.5 years older, and she really demoralized me in so many different ways. So I lost all of my self-esteem and self-confidence in so many different aspects, until I was walking along to one of my classes at high school, and I saw these 2 girls that were on the veranda of the next classroom, and I could see they bent over, and as I was walking towards the class, I could see they had my bag in their hand. And as I got closer, I could see they were graffitiing all over it, and I raced up to them and snatched my bag out of their hand, and they just written all these derogatory comments all over my bag, and I just lost my shit and started screaming at them and started crying, and at that time the rest of the class were turning up for the class to start, so everyone started laughing at me and heckling me, and I was just so humiliated in so many different ways. And that afternoon, when I was leaving class, I was walking past the school notice board, and there was a notice for a triathlon on there, and I kind of sat there and looked at it and read over it, and then took it off the notice board, put it in my pocket, and rode home, and laid down on my bed in my bedroom and just kept reading it for an hour or so. And then I walked out and spoke to my mum and said, "Hey mum, I want to do a triathlon." She kind of stopped cooking and looked at me and was like, "I'm sorry, you what?" What did you say?
Do you have a fever or something?
And she was like, "Okay, do you really want to?" I said, "Yes, I really want to do a triathlon." And then 3 months later, I became second in the state for my age.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. That's awesome.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, I just got, I got attention. I got attention from girls. People started wanting to become friends with me. It really shifted my life when I threw that gauntlet down and said, that's it. I'm sick of this. I'm changing. And 9 months, I was actually studying to become an architect, right? So I was quite creative. But the reason why I wanted to become an architect was because I wanted to work in my own space. I didn't want anyone to bully me or anything like that. So I chose something where I could be in solitude. And after I threw down the gauntlet, about 9 months later, a friend of mine said, hey, do you want to support me in this audition for the school's theatre restaurant? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll come along and support you. Anyway, when we were there, they asked me to audition.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, no way, no, I'm not auditioning. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
No, I'm an introvert. No, kids, no. And they kept asking me, and I just felt that pressure.
Yeah.
Someone just keep asking. I said yes, just to shut them up. And then I got the part.
Oh, wow.
And I fell in love.
Yeah.
I fell in love. And in a month after that, I was halfway through grade 11, only 18 months away from graduating. And I changed all my subjects from physics and science and maths 1 and maths 2. I changed them to speech and drama and theater and dancing and shifted my whole existence.
So it's a total life change pretty much.
Yeah, man. And I delved deep in, and that was kind of part of my awakening in myself. I started getting involved into understanding consciousness because of acting and because they questioned us on that. And the training that I received was a deep inner journey inside your own self to really understand who you are, because you can't really understand who you are if to have the ability of playing another character and coming back to self. And you would have heard of all these stories of people that lose themselves in their acting roles.
Yeah.
And, become alcoholics and drug addicts and get depressed and all of that kind of stuff. Well, most of the time they're not trained properly to really understand who they are and go through the healing journey within their own self.
That's so great. Like, I never thought of it. I mean, of course, I've never been an actor. I would love to do it. I like to think of myself as an extravagant person. And people always say, like, man, you're a man of many masks and everything. But I never thought of actors having to go back into, like you said, their self. Like, already have that, knowing what they're going to go into, and then being able to pull from it and then just fall just easily back into their life again. And then, like you said, there's so many that, I mean, there's some that have gone to the extremes of all the way to suicide because of the roles that they fell into. And like you said, they're not properly trained to handle, to get back into the normal groove. And I just never thought of it just literally, having to find yourself again. I guess I always thought that you just kind of, shook off your role, throw the script down, you're done with the movie. And then, on to the next one, and you just keep rolling with your life, and you just kind of take bits and pieces from each movie and keep rolling with it. But I totally understand where you're coming from. That's amazing.
Yeah, it really is a journey. And I'll use a really powerful example of this. Do you recall Heath Ledger?
Yes,
yeah,
I loved Heath Ledger.
Method actor, yeah.
Yeah, incredible actor. And his downfall was from the Joker from Batman, which, in my opinion, was one of the best roles to date in history. Right?
Yeah.
It was exceptional.
My favorite Joker by far.
Yeah, absolutely. He was never fully trained properly at an early age, so he was discovered at a young age, at 15, 16, and he got really thrust into that limelight. And he kind of did some training along the way and all of that. But this is where people get stuck. They lose where they are at and what's important for them. And this is where people fall over. And yeah, he did die from a drug overdose, which was pharmaceutical drugs. But it was the notion that he was losing himself in his character. He didn't know when to switch on and when to switch off, and he had to use uppers and downers to allow him to rest properly.
Wow.
Which is, obviously a really good example of what not to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have a question, Kang. Jared Leto, the one who played the Joker in Suicide Squad, they were worried about him with method acting.
Yeah, that was after Heath Ledger. Yeah.
Yeah, because he did method acting for that, and so I know you mentioned before that you had worked with Margot Robbie. Did any of that occur, or did she talk about that, or did you experience any of that while working with any of these people?
No. See, Margot Robbie was a bit younger at that point, and it was a pretty drastic scene that we were playing together. I actually beat her up and tied her up and went to go and rape her. It was a pretty intense, moment that we were sharing together. And part of that was, the director, Ash Aaron, who was directing the film at the time, he wanted me to keep as far away from everyone as possible during shooting, so as they didn't get to know me too well.
Wow.
Because he wanted them to really feel the shock value of realism in that, and in my character and the position that they were placed in. And I get the methodology, but it can sort of backfire in that way. So I'm trained in method, but I'm also trained in technique. I'm trained in a few different aspects, and I use the ability of everything, and have chosen the things that really work for me, because actors can be very, very much prostitutes of their emotions if they're not careful. And so, there's a lot of grounding that goes on, the ability of, disconnecting and making sure you're grounding yourself afterwards and all of that.
Let me ask you.
Margot Robbie is exceptional.
Like when you're saying, like earlier, you're having to switch, like an actor has to pull from their acting role back into their normal self. Is this something that would happen like a daily, like as you're shooting, you had to like pull back in your normal self, or were you meaning like from the aspect of when the filming is completely done with the movie and everything, and then you just kind of continue with life, or is it just a daily process of back and forth?
Yeah, look, it's a daily process of back and forth. Okay. I mean, I know these actors that like to live their roles while they're involved in their roles, and they become that person. But in reality, it's very difficult to maintain, especially if you have a relationship or you're married. It's very difficult to maintain that type of relationship if you're dealing with someone that's not actually them, their true selves. So you have to take that personal responsibility. And again, whatever works for anyone to get the creative input across that is viable and workable and doable. And look, I'm a character actor, so I tend to change my whole body and my physique and the way that I walk, my intonations. I do change my body, but I still have to come back to self at the end of the day to be able to process things, because you also have to be a professional too in the ability of analyzing what worked and what didn't work.
True.
Filming is very different to doing a theater play, where a theater play you're involved for 2 to 3 hours, and you live in that character for let's say 4 or 5 hours of that day, being that character and being immersed. Whereas film is stop, start, technical issues. Can you redo that? Hang on, we've got to talk about this.
Yeah.
You missed your mark. Get into the light.
Yeah.
What are you doing? It's a constant to and fro. So you still have to be connected to your ability of being professional and taking on board, the coaching or the direction, and making sure you're connecting wholeheartedly with the embodiment of soul, because acting is reacting. So you can only give as much as you're receiving back from the other actor.
Right. This can also work in real life.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said giving, or you're reacting to, acting to reacting. You have to do that in real life as well. So what you're doing is very important, even in your world and everybody else's life, because what you're giving is what you're going to give out. Like if you're giving me bad energy, you probably are going to get bad energy.
Yes, exactly. And this is pretty much what I teach now. So I'm a transformational coach now. I teach coaches and experts how to be able to use their story to build aligned audience, so they're making sales without selling.
Wow.
So they're actually connecting. In today's day and age, we've been so bombarded for so long about direct selling and sell, and people are kind of sick of it. And after the last 3 years, with everything that happened around the world with COVID, people are looking for connection.
Yes.
People are looking for relationships. People are desperate for looking for leaders that are certain in their ability of taking people from the darkness into the light, right?
Right.
That was so well put.
And to be able to demonstrate that you're a living and breathing example of your own existence, that you've embodied your light, that you've embodied your path, is only demonstrated through your own story by the examples that you can share.
Man, this is so empowering. That's exactly what we're about. Like with the Golden Spoon podcast is just about taking our stories and stories of others and topics that we can find. And then literally that's what me and him talk about, is if we can just know that we saved one life somewhere in the world with the message that we're trying to spread and everything, and making awareness to all these things that people are just afraid to talk about. It's totally worth it to us.
Yeah, it is.
Man, you just gave me goosebumps all over my body, because
that's what I'm talking about, man. That's what we're here for. We love connection too. We love relationship, and we love podcasting because we can connect to Australia and News. We're right now we're being listened in 21 countries, so it's just amazing that we're able to reach people just here in this small town of Alabama, and we're actually making an impact and changing people's lives.
Yeah, it's so important, guys. I really honor you in your delivery of allowing people to listen to other people's stories, for them to engage and see the relationships and see that there is always a different perspective.
Yes.
Life is just about perspective, man.
Well, I don't want to run too much out of time, but switching from acting to back to self, I guess, and the thing that you do the most, what are some of the advice and tips and everything you give, mainly for me and McCall, but our audience is going to benefit from it too?
Well, that's a big question, man. That's a very deep question.
Jeremy usually is filled with big questions.
Yes.
I'll give you an example of part of the program that I do, which is the story extraction method.
Yes.
So this method has been developed by me from my years of experience in film and entertainment, and understanding that everyone reacts for a reason. Like nothing exists without a reason. And your reactions are always because of something in your own story, and discovering what that reaction is connected to is the path of awakening and awareness. So there are five steps to coming back to self, which are super important. And it starts with acknowledging. That's the first step. Okay. You need to acknowledge that there is a problem. You need to acknowledge that there is a reaction that doesn't serve you. The next step is accepting. You need to accept that that's part of who you are, and it's attached to somewhere in your story, and somewhere you need to find and fall back in love with that part of yourself. And the next step, which is one of the hardest for everyone to face and come to terms with, is forgiveness. And it's not just the forgiveness of someone else, but most importantly, it's the forgiveness of yourself.
That's what's hardest
To
for me,
allow yourself-
Kane, is the forgiveness. I mean, that's something I had to work on for you. I mean, I don't want to go too much into myself, but now I'm coming the end of this year, I'll be 5 years now or divorced and being single dad and everything. And some of the things like was the hardest for me. I mean, I had all my other parts of my story, but it's forgiving myself that it was in the past and I've accepted my past and I've healed that past and I forgive so I can move on from it. Yeah, I may fall into some more mistakes and I'm going to make mistakes my entire life. I know that, but forgiving myself for the ones that I'm still holding on to from the past was one of the hardest things I had to do. I can forgive someone in a heartbeat, but to forgive myself, man, I'll beat myself up to death.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that you brought that up because it's so important to. It is one of the fundamental aspects of being able to come back to self and allow your own light to really blossom, to really glow brightly, is the very notion that we're human beings. We only know what we know at the time that we're making a choice. And we have to accept that. And we have to forgive ourselves. And if it was a bad choice, if it was a bad decision, well, we only knew what we knew when it was happening.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to remember, because look, in 10 years' time, I'm going to be a lot more wiser.
Yeah.
But I can't compare myself to 10 years ago if I'm comparing myself to something that's in a space of my understanding and wisdom in 20 years. Do you know what I mean? There's no comparison. You can't compare. You're not the same person.
Yeah.
You're a completely different person, which leads to the next step. And the next step is healing. Because true healing comes from the allowance of forgiveness. And within that healing, so this is why people get addicted to healing. You'll see people that have been on their healing journey for 15, 20 years, and they're still going to people to heal them, where that's not the case. And there's a block in one of the other stages, because after healing is the release. When we come to a place of release, we've actually allowed ourselves to connect to the glorified essence of who our soul actually is.
Wow.
So when you release, what is like the process of release with your story extraction method? How do you release after you've healed?
The best way to describe it, Jeremy and Nicole, the best way to describe it is that you can talk about your experience and you can be joyful about it.
Wow.
And you can sit there and you can actually look at the lessons and be filled with joy about how that divorce, that process in the divorce, was such an exciting period of life, because I had to learn all these different things about me. And if it hadn't have happened, I wouldn't be here now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now if it hadn't have been for my divorce.
That's crazy.
My divorce, my love. So that was 4.5 years ago. If I hadn't have gone through that 4.5 years ago, I wouldn't be here where I am right now. And I wouldn't be in a joyful state to be able to open my heart. So I was chatting with someone just before I jumped on the call with you guys, and she read one of my stories, and she was actually asking, how was my heart? She's an intuitive and a healer. And I was like, it's actually one of the most valuable lessons I learned from my profession was always connecting to the inner child and always allowing the heart to be free.
You gave me chill bumps.
Communicate.
me and McCall's talked about that before. I think it was just earlier before you called in about going back and healing your inner child. You got to find where that innocence was robbed from you, that very first moment, and you got to go back and heal that. And then once you've healed that, don't leave it there. Don't leave that 6-year-old self sitting there abandoned. He may be healed, but carried with him. Put him in your arms and take him with you. He's going to be there when you're 30 and you're 40 and you're 50.
Yes, because that, the inner child is where real love is, where real joy is. If you look at yourself with it, when your baby was first born, your baby came in this world in a state of joy and love.
Yeah.
That's the purity of their soul. That's the purity of their existence. Joy and love, curiosity. Inner child is curious about learning new things, experiencing new things, the growth, the butterfly, the bird that's tweeting, and it's like getting excited each time you see it and going, yeah, life is freaking good.
Man.
And that's all about being present.
I swear, if the audience listening, I mean, I know this is not live or anything, but when the people are listening to this, I swear, we just met Kane. But it seems like we've known each other for at least a month now or something. We're on the same level about everything. It is crazy.
Thanks, guys. This is just a beautiful relationship that's being formed here, and I just love it. And I've got to say, like, one of the most important aspects of releasing is loving every single part of our own story, loving every single part of our light and every single part of our darkness, and just accepting who we are.
Ooh, write those down for me. He's got a notepad over here. McCall's been taking notes for us.
Yeah, I have.
I like that. That's real good. Man, that's something else. So,
can I add one thing just about the divorce aspect?
Yeah, go ahead, definitely.
I know we're trying to, because we could talk for hours, right? We could talk for hours.
Oh,
we
yeah.
only just met.
Exactly.
But there's one really important aspect. You know, when I was going through my divorce, and it was very in your face. Initially, when my wife separated with me, you know, she sat me down at the kitchen table after I got home from work, and I was a what you would call, I guess, a general manager. I had a big team under me and things like that, huge responsibilities and things, running big events and all of that kind of stuff. And she sat me down, and you know, there was a thickness in the air, and I could tell something was off, right? I could feel the energy, and I was like, you know, what's going on? Anyway, she sat the kids down in the lounge room with their dinner, and I was like, oh, that's peculiar. What's happening? And she sat our plates, you know, opposite each other, facing each other, and she was sitting down and she was playing with her food on a plate, and her fork was sliding across the plate and making that sound like the blackboard, right?
Oh, gosh.
You know that sound, thinking, yeah, right, and sending chills down my spine. I was like, oh, my God, what? This is
yeah,
intense.
what's about to happen? Who's about to die or something?
And she looked up at me and she said, I'm done. You're too weak for me. I need a stronger man.
Wow.
And immediately in my mind, I thought to myself, whoa, that was heavy.
Yeah.
And in the first 3 months, she had said that it was her thing, that she needed to sort herself out. She needed space to work through things in her own self. And on that third month, a friend of ours, who she used to work with, left his wife.
Whoa.
And 2 kids. And both our kids went to the same school. And about 3 weeks after that, I kind of put pressure on her and found out that they were having a sexual relationship. So I went through this process of grieving at the beginning, working on myself really hard in the first 3 months, and the focus was that I wasn't going to let my marriage end at all. I was going to be able to do the work on myself and fix things. And when that happened, it was like an explosion inside me, and all hope was lost. And it became a very public affair. You know, kids at school, my kids had to change schools, and it was very, very, very challenging in that respect. But there is one thing, Jeremy and McCall, what really made me dig deep inside myself to keep moving on, to come to a peaceful place. And that was, I asked myself every day, I asked myself in every moment, in every event, in any moment that she would attack me and saying how I was to blame for everything associated to the fail in the marriage, I asked myself, how would love respond?
Wow.
Oh,
And
that's a heavy thing.
Yeah, that question there made me change the way that I responded and the way that I reacted by allowing myself to really understand what love is.
Wow. I'm proud of you. I mean, that's a lot to come from.
Yeah, man. Yeah, well, like, we have a very open communication. It took about 9 months of really hard work to work through all these intense emotions and come to a place of peace and understanding, where our co-parenting was able to thrive and the children felt safe and secure. It takes a lot of work, but it has to be on both sides. You know, you just can't have a one-sided affair in that respect. So thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that.
Oh yeah.
Very proud.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I think that what we have talked about today is very important to a lot of people. Understanding, being able again to understand themselves and using those 5 steps. And, you know, the third step is probably the hardest.
Yeah.
But after you get over that, and after you get over, you know, you're in your healing process and you release, you know, you can start over and be able to tell your story. Like you said, Kane, that
And be joyful.
And be joyful about it.
I've never heard that until tonight. That makes so much sense. It's just being able to say it not in a negative way, but in an empowering way, so the person actually receives something from it when they walk away.
Yes. Yeah,
Wow.
That's beautifully said, man.
Well, we are about out of time. We may just go ahead and wrap it up, but we're definitely going to have you back on. Like you said earlier, this is just a beginning to a beautiful relationship here, and we got plenty to talk about. So we definitely, we got Father's Day and stuff coming up, so we can get some more men guests and all that, and get some more people lined up. And I'm not trying to bring gender too much into it, but everything you were explaining, especially with divorce, there's men out there that they go to the law office or whatever, they get their own lawyer and everything, try to fight and do what they can, but they never heal from it, and they never use their story to help the next man that's having to go through it. And I feel like all those emotions and everything just get pushed under the rug. And yeah, you may have a Heath Ledger story one day from that, is because a man is not properly healing from a divorce. So, I mean, and not just divorce, it's anything that,
I was about to say, any aspect of life, a death,
crazy.
A loss of a friend, anything, you can go through this process and use. I mean, I've lost a dear friend,
Yep.
and he was only 33 at the time, and it was terrible because he died from something that could have been fixed with medicine, but didn't go to the hospital in time, so he left the earth early. So this helps as well, for that situation.
Absolutely it does. Yeah, it's such an important aspect, and I'm really glad you raised that envelope of men and going through divorce, and that was one of the reasons why I got into coaching. Was a friend of mine who had completely gone into a shell. I mean, she was a woman, but I mean, at the same time, she was an extrovert. She was joyful. She was always on social media, sharing herself and sharing joy into the world. And I hadn't seen her like for 5 years, 6 years, and she just popped into my head, and I got in touch with her, and we were messaging. I wanted to call her, and she wasn't even able to speak to me. She said, I'm just not in that space. And what I found out was that she went through a divorce, but it had been 5 years.
Wow.
and I sat there and I was like, this isn't right.
Yeah.
Like, it's not fair that someone is sitting in their own darkness because of someone else that doesn't care that they're sitting in their darkness.
So well put.
Yeah, that was perfect. I mean,
so glad there's more people out there, just like what we've been talking about. That you're caring for someone that, I mean, yeah, I know that you knew that person, but it's just thinking that there's people out there that's hurting that don't need to be. There's help out there. I mean, even if you're not going to go and get professional help immediately, there's still tools and techniques and steps that you can take to start your own healing.
Yes, absolutely. I really appreciate it, you two boys. What a beautiful conversation we've had. I really, really cherish
Oh, yeah, no problem. If you would, Kane, if you stick around a little bit and we'll chit-chat some about some details and everything, and we'll go ahead and close up.
Yeah, after we close, if you'll just stay on the line, we'll talk after I give the outro and everything, and we'll talk afterwards.
Sensational, boys. Thank you very much, and
yes.
Goodbye to everyone. Peace to all of you, and live in your heart.
Yeah, if you want to, before we close out, do you have any socials you want people to follow you on, or any website or anything that you would like to give to the audience?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm the only person in the world called Kane Sarota Novak. So if you Google Kane Sarota Novak, you are going to come across me. So,
awesome. That is awesome.
You can't make a mistake. So I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, and I've just teamed up with an amazing group of coaches and healers. It's called the Infinity Wellness Group. And they're creating some extraordinary transformations for people, and just building wonderful communities to be a part of for people to really start living in their own awakening and moving through their spiritual life.
That's awesome.
Well, that's fantastic. We'll end the show, and we'll talk to you. Stay on the line, and we'll talk to you after we end the show, my friend.
Amazing. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. We would like to thank Kane for coming on and being able to talk to us in such short notice. We know the time difference is a little wild, but I think I enjoyed it. I know Jeremy did, and I hope Kane did. We hope everybody out there enjoyed this episode as well. Thank you for listening to the Golden Spoon Podcast. I'm McCall.
And I'm Jeremy.
And we'll talk to y'all next time.